Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to our annual Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium, which is presented by the Hyde Family Foundation, and a very special welcome to all of those of you who are watching at home on Fox Sports Southeast. I'm Pete Pranica, the TV voice of our Memphis Grizzlies, and thrilled once again to be the moderator for this afternoon's symposium. Now today, as we have every January for the past 18 years, we pay tribute to athletes who have made significant contributions to both civil and human rights. Today's sports legacy honorees not only have distinguished themselves on the field and on the court, but they have also distinguished themselves beyond the venues of athletic competition by invoking the spirit of Dr. King and helping to create a better society. We are proud to once again partner with the National Civil Rights Museum to host not only today's symposium, but also a series of events this past week and this weekend that give a platform to critical dialogue that not only honors Dr. King's legacy, but continues his life's work that remains undone. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you the president of the Grizzlies and FedExForum, Mr. Jason Wexler.
Good afternoon, and thank you to those joining us here today in person at the Built Ford Tough practice facility at FedExForum and those watching from home on Fox Sports Southeast. Before we begin the annual Earl Lloyd Legacy Symposium, I would like to thank all the partners who have helped make today's events possible. Our co-hosts, the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel, the City of Memphis and Shelby County, our title sponsor for today's game, Ford and your Mid-South Ford dealers, today's symposium sponsor, the Hyde Family Foundation, and our associate celebration and game sponsors, FedEx and Ashley Home Stores. On behalf of the Grizzlies organization, I would also like to welcome to today's 18th annual MLK Day celebration game our Sports Legacy Award honorees, NBA staff and officials, and the New Orleans Pelicans, and thank them all for their support of the weekend and the museum. Today's game versus the Pelicans tips off at 4 o'clock, but we encourage fans to get to their seats early so they can enjoy the presentation of the National Civil Rights Museum Sports Legacy Award to this year's honorees. And at halftime, fans will have an opportunity to enjoy a performance by Grammy Award-winning singer and actor Leslie Odom Jr. Additionally, throughout the plaza-level concourse today, the Grizzlies Foundation's youth mentoring community partners will be available to answer questions and discuss opportunities to become a mentor as part of our MLK Day Mentor Recruitment Fair. As we remember and celebrate the 91st birthday of Dr. King today, the annual tradition of honoring his legacy is a point of pride for our entire organization. We work to bring awareness to and support for the National Civil Rights Museum's drive to deepen our understanding of the ongoing movement for social and economic justice that Dr. King defined. The Grizzlies are pleased and thankful on this day every year to be able to ignite a conversation that both reflects on where we have come from and reminds us of how much remains to be accomplished. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jason. Of course, an integral partner to everything that goes on during this time period is the National Civil Rights Museum, and I'd like to welcome the Chief Marketing and External Affairs Officer, Mrs. Faith Morris, to the podium for a welcome.
Good afternoon. I've just come from the National Civil Rights Museum where thousands are there to commemorate this special day. On this King Day 2020, the 91st birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we do what we do every year at the National Civil Rights Museum. We lift his voice, his ideals, his teachings, his brilliance, his strategic leadership, his love for his family and mankind that put much of what we're going through today and much of what we need to change in perspective. Dr. King was a humanitarian, a realist, a visionary. We will always keep him close. We thank the Grizzlies, who have been outstanding partners for the National Civil Rights Museum, for another National Civil Rights Museum Sports Legacy Award. We had a great day yesterday with the intersection of race and sports, where we dig very deep into some issues, and our honorees and our panel were phenomenal in those discussions. These legends who you'll hear from today and see honored later today broke barriers and made a way for the future in sports. Our young athletes need to know what got them here. And then one final note, we thank the NBA that again has teams throughout the league from January 16th through today wearing MLK warm-up jerseys to commemorate this special time with sales benefiting the National Civil Rights Museum. Again, thank you so much and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much, Faith. The National Civil Rights Museum is such a treasure here in the heart of Memphis, and many, if not all, NBA teams, when they come to Memphis, they visit the museum, and it is an absolute treasure, and we're thrilled as the Grizzlies to partner with the National Civil Rights Museum. Now, for those of you who are watching at home on Fox Sports Southeast, we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we will start this afternoon's conversation. This is the Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium from FedExForum on Fox Sports Southeast. Welcome back to the Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium presented by the Hyde Family Foundation here in the Built Ford Tough Practice Facility at FedExForum. And it is time now to meet our honorees for this year. Our first recipient played 9 seasons in the National Football League and was the first African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl when his MVP performance led Washington over Denver in Super Bowl 22. Through his foundation, he has helped economically and physically challenged youth with after-schools initiatives, mentoring programs, and minority higher education assistance. A member of the College Football Hall of Fame and an HBCU Grambling State alumnus, he currently serves in the Washington front office as Senior Vice President of Player Development. Please welcome Doug Williams. Our next recipient was drafted 10th overall in the 2002 NBA draft by the Miami Heat. He played 14 seasons in the association and was named to the NBA All-Rookie First Team. Also a 2-time All-Star and an NBA champion as a member of the Dallas Mavericks. He is currently an entrepreneur who has committed heavily to philanthropy and has supported youth education, athletic programs, and nonprofits that serve low-wage working families. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Caron Butler. Our next recipient is a 4-time WNBA champion, a 3-time Olympic gold medal winner, and was named WNBA MVP and WNBA Defensive Player of the Year on 3 separate occasions. She was named a member of the WNBA's top 15 players of all time in 2011 and its top 20 at 20 list in 2016. She was elected to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2016 and the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. She was also the first women's basketball player to have her own shoe, the Nike Air Swoopes. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheryl Swoopes.
Yeah.
And our final recipient spent 21 seasons in the NBA, 14 of them on the fabled parquet of Boston Garden, while contributing to 4 NBA championships.
Yes.
He still holds the record for the most games played, 1,611.
What?
A 9-time All-Star. He was named to the NBA's 50th anniversary all-time team and elected to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. His familiar 00 hangs in the rafters in Boston. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Parish. Well, this is great. We've got a very engaged audience, and I know you're all ready to talk. Hopefully you've not talked out over all the things and all the appearances that you've made, and we'll discuss some of the things that you've seen during this weekend. But I was reading the Washington Post, and I read this column about Dr. King, and I like quotes, and I wanted to share this with you, and it can kind of be our jumping off point for the afternoon. David Von Drael wrote, "It is good to remember that the life we revere and celebrate this week was shadowed by doubt, stalked by division, haunted by fear, and plagued by a sense of failure. We honor Martin Luther King Jr. not for his victories, which remain incomplete at best. We honor him for his vision and for his sacrificial commitment to that vision. He saw what we might be capable of as individuals and as a nation, and believed in that possibility so deeply that he dropped everything else, even life itself, to hold it high where we can always see it. Like King, we also choose each day whether to live in hope or in fear, with love or hate, as builders or destroyers. From King, we learn the lesson that these choices are never as easy as they sound and never as popular as we imagine. In Dr. King, we have a model for choosing and a fierce example of the final refusal to give up. So we'll use that as kind of a jumping off point today. I think that was very, very well said. Just by way of understanding where you come to meet Dr. King, I'd like each of you, and Robert, I'm going to start with you. When did you first become aware of Dr. King's teachings, and what impressed you when you began to learn about his life and work?
My parents were big fans of Dr. King, and that's how I first learned about him. They were big advocates for respect and treat each other the way you wanted them to treat you. Don't be prejudiced or racist. They preached all-inclusiveness, and so that was my first experience when I really started to pay attention to Dr. King's messages and what he stood for. My parents' philosophy resonated with me even more.
Sheryl?
Probably a lot like Chief over here. My mom and my grandparents, my grandfather and my grandmother were really big into African American history and just making sure that they would spread the word, not only from Dr. King, but so many that came before us and myself. And one of the biggest lessons I think for me that I got from it and that I learned and try to carry on today, like Robert said, is you treat people the way you want to be treated. But also my message to our African American youth is to be proud of who you are and never let anybody tell you that you're not good enough, you're not powerful enough, you're not strong enough, because we are exactly the way God made us and where we're supposed to be, and understanding who Dr. King was and what he represented and what his vision was for this world, not just African Americans, but being here this weekend just shows me that we still have so much more work to do.
Caron?
Man, I go back to being a 5-6-year-old kid where I was able to recognize images on the wall, and I'm pretty sure anyone from the black and brown communities out there, it was a picture of Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King. And I used to always ask my grandmother, like, who is that individual right there? And she was like, this was a great man. This was an individual that sacrificed so much like all the other men on the wall. And I wanted to know the history. I wanted to know, the story behind it and the sacrifices, because she was like, in due time, you'll learn more, and I learned so much on this trip already, just visiting the museum, learning the impact, learning the sacrifices. I'm more informed, I'm better from this trip, and I look forward to, the future for, all of us, because, it was a powerful trip.
Yeah, of course.
I think like all of us up here, we probably learned more from our parents who Dr. Martin Luther King was. And being able to grow up and realize a guy like that was fighting against all the odds, and it wasn't physical. You had to learn, why would he do that? And I think as time gone on, you realize here's a man that had no fear without the violence. And so many people followed him, white and black. That's the good part about it. It wasn't just black following Dr. Martin Luther King. People understood what he was fighting for, the injustice of so many people. And for all of us to be sitting here on this stage today is partly because Martin Luther King lived to give us that opportunity, and hope that we can carry on.
Absolutely.
I want to piggyback on something Caron said. You all had the opportunity to visit the National Civil Rights Museum. What were your impressions? What were your thoughts? What were your takeaways? What was the thing that impressed you most as you made that visit?
I didn't know what to feel when I initially went in there. For the last, I think, 5 times or 4 to 5 times we've come here, when I was still active as a player, it was being remodeled or something was going on. And I was just like, man, that's the devil working right there. They don't want me to get an opportunity to connect with my history. But, fast forward to now, I had mixed emotions. I was happy. I was proud to be who I am, and proud to be a part of the legacy of my ancestors, and then I was frustrated. I was upset. I was angry, especially when I went on the balcony. And I saw one of the quotes that he had said, "I may not get there with you," on one of his last speeches. And for him to have that no fear and still march in, you know, the people honor and stand for something bigger than himself, it hit home. It was an emotional moment. You know, me and my sister was out there, you know, crying as we all had an emotional moment in that time.
Anybody else?
Well, I think Caron is right. You know, we all feel like, and even, you know, in my stage of life, I feel like I knew a lot more about what Dr. Martin Luther King went through. But when you go through the museum, you realize it's so much more that you did not know, and you learn, and it just work on you from a standpoint, how could any human being put young kids, older people through what they had to go through in order to find injustice in this country?
I'll speak briefly because I don't want to cry again. A lot like Caron and what Doug said, initially I had no idea what I was going to feel. I knew I would be emotional because it's such a historical moment, and to be able to be here this weekend, and you know, we're being honored because of what Dr. King did and who he was and what he stood for. I went through every emotion from being happy to have this opportunity to being sad, to being frustrated. And I was angry throughout, but it really hit me when we walked out onto the balcony.
Yeah.
And it became real. And when you think about the sacrifices that Dr. King made for all of us in this room, it's very frustrating to know that a simple thing as voting, you know, people sacrificed for us to have that right to vote today. And so many of us don't take advantage of that opportunity.
No,
so it's times like that that I think about it and I'm saying, it's not about you, but it's about the people that came before you and the people that will come after you, that we should be doing the things that Dr. King fought so hard for. And just being here and going through the museum this weekend was just very eye-opening to me.
Chief, you have anything to add?
Yes, I'm just going to echo what the others have said in terms of the emotions. My emotion ebbed and flowed. I was happy to go through the museum and see Martin Luther King legacy on display, and to further realize and understand that the life I've been afforded was because of what Martin Luther King stood for and all his contemporaries. I was angry because we no longer have him. You know, we lost him prematurely too early, so I was pissed about that. And I'm not, excuse my language. I'm not normally an emotional person, but I have to say, when we was Caron and I and Sheryl was all out on the balcony, I have to say I got emotional. And I'm not an emotional person, but that was a moving moment for me. So I am flattered and humbled to be here to help celebrate Dr. King's legacy.
I was pissed too.
Dr. King stood for so many different things. And some of the things that I was just going through in my reading and my research, some of the things that jumped out to me: nonviolent protest, activism rather than being a passive observer of society, justice for all, and a consistent adherence to values instead of moral relativism. Which of those jump out to you, speak to you as being very, very important parts of his legacy?
I'll go first. For me, my respect grew for Dr. King, the nonviolence part. Because when somebody's putting a leather to you and you don't fight back, I respect that. I respect that big time. Because I don't know whether I got the fortitude for that. Somebody putting it on me like that, I'm throwing punches. So I have even more respect for Dr. King for his philosophy about nonviolence. You get more done with honey than you do with vinegar. So I respect that philosophy and what Dr. King stood for.
Floor is open.
Well, I think when you look back, it's more for being active, being able to go out there and do the marches. You know, it's easy to say I'm a nonviolent person, but to go out there and portray it, to show you who I really am. I thought it took a lot for him to march in the time that he was marching, when water hoses, rubber bullets and dogs and everything else was sicked on you. For him to leave his house knowing he got a family, to go out there and put it on the line like that, to me, is a man of great faith, moralistic values, and go out and be active and believe in what he says he's all about. That's who he was.
I totally agree. I think just the sacrifice part of it. You know, it's easy now in modern times where you see people that act like they want to jump out there and be on the front line of what's right and hide behind, you know, tweets and different things. But to stand behind what you represent firmly and be willing to sacrifice your life, your family in danger, being a leader of other human beings and individuals, and being able to have that foresight of, look, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen the promised land, and trusting your vision, I think that speaks volumes. Like he was one of a kind, and that's why it's truly an honor. Like to be on this platform with so many greats. I told Doug I was 8 years old.
I'm sure Doug appreciated that.
No, for real.
It is what it is, right?
I called him OG, but I told him I was 8 years old when my grandmother told me to go outside and run to the Buick because you're going to be just like Doug.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And, you know, watching all these greats up here, I actually went to school with his son, you know, Robert Parish Jr. And growing up, I think she's on the Mount Rushmore of, you know, basketball players as a whole. Not this WNBA, but basketball.
Dang.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It's true. It's true.
So it's like, I'm getting emotional just because it's an honor to be on this platform with all of them, but also being honored in his legacy.
Yes,
it means a lot.
And you want me to say something after that?
You can contribute as you wish or not. You can take a pen.
Well, I mean, I think it's so easy to talk about Dr. King and his legacy and what he represented. So for me, I would say there's a couple, and it would absolutely be sacrifice. He is the epitome of what it means and what it looks like to sacrifice. And it wasn't about him. It wasn't about his life. He had a vision. And it saddens me today that vision he had, we still have that vision for us to have a better life and for situations to be better, for conditions to be better, for just that vision that Dr. King had. So when you talk about sacrifice, and I look at every single one of us up here as athletes, as former athletes, you know, we all made sacrifices to be the best that we could be in our field. But to me, that's not a real sacrifice. What Dr. King did was a real sacrifice. Yes. And the other part would be activism. You know, like Caron said, there are so many people out there that it's easy to sit behind social media and talk about what you're gonna do, the differences you're making, and who's not doing what. But the way I look at that is, what are you doing? If you see something wrong, you say something. If you want things to be better, you have to go and you have to make a difference. You have to be a part of it. The old saying that says you can talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? And I think every single one of us up here, we have a mission, we have a purpose. And when they told me I was getting this honor, I was just like, why? You know, and why this is so special to me is that I look at it and say it has nothing to do with my talents and what I did on the basketball court, but it has everything to do with my humanitarianism and everything that I do off the court and what's important to me in life, and that's helping make it better for our up-and-coming youth in this world today.
No, of course.
Which leads me naturally to where I wanted to go next, which is toot your own horn a little bit. Tell us about what you have done and are doing in the community. Caron, I know what you're doing with juvenile diabetes and with healthy eating for young people. Just tell us some of the things that you are doing in your local community to evoke the spirit of Dr. King to, Sheryl, as you said, make things better.
Well, I think one of the things that's been dear to my heart outside of, my daughter being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes this past March is bringing awareness. Me and my wife, that's a community that you don't want to be a part of, unfortunately, but it happens, and you have to identify the problem, which is when you have a underperforming immune system, a pancreas that doesn't work, and your body needs insulin because it doesn't produce it. It's important for us to use our platform to bring awareness to it. Also, another something that is a major issue is mass incarceration. I serve on the board on the Vera Institute, where we address mass incarceration as a whole, and we try to fix people that go to corrections and identify the traumas that they go through and try to rehabilitate them. I was an individual that did under 2 years in corrections, and when I was going through that process, I never had no one come and pull back the layers of my trauma and talk about why I was really there and identify the problem and, help me be a better version of me. So that was something that was dear to my heart. And we go back into these correctional facilities. Now we have a partner in the NBA, and more partners are coming on where they're giving us the necessary resources to go out into these correctional facilities and just rehabilitate these individuals. Now, a lot of you may look at that problem and be like, yeah, they did a crime, you go to jail. But at some point, they're going to get out. And do you want them to come out worse than they were when they went in? Or do you want them to be rehabilitated where they can adjust to society? And that's dear to my heart.
Wow.
I think with me, back in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, James Harris and I, we started the Harris Williams Foundation, and one of the first things that we did was our foundation started in Shreveport, Louisiana, where Robert is from. There were so many young kids misplaced during a hurricane, and it was during the holidays, and him and I got together along with some more folks, and we say, there's going to be a lot of unhappy kids. So we worked with Walmart, and we came up with a solution that it was over 100 and some kids. We was able to make sure they had $100 to spend for Christmas. And the parents couldn't do anything with it because we made it what it had to be for kid clothes or toys. And then we grew into the Black College Football Hall of Fame. James Harris and I, we started that. And every year that we induct candidates into the Hall of Fame, we donate $5,000 to the university that they graduated from. And we did that, and then, thank you. And then we had the dinner, the Washington Legend dinner in Washington, D.C., along with Thomas Moorhead, who owns dealerships up there, and we worked together. And every year we gave about 17 kids scholarships to college, and we helped a lot of players. We'll find a player in the area that sustained a catastrophe injury, and we'll help, like one guy broke his neck, so we help buy the equipment for that guy to make sure he can go home and be able to do the exercise at home. So it's all about giving back because so much was given to us, so we have opportunity to give back to people, and that's the most important thing.
Wow.
That's awesome. For me, in my community, I describe my activities as a mentor. Mentor some young people in my neighborhood and in my city. And what the message I try to convey to them is that whatever you want to be, you can be if you want it bad enough. You got to believe, you got to be focused, and you got to be dedicated to whatever it is you want to be, because all of us have been given a talent, but all of us are not given an opportunity. So I always tell the young people, when preparation meets opportunity, there's your luck or your faith. So I always tell them, get your education first, because that's the foundation. Education is the foundation of whatever it is you're going to do in life. So that's the message and that I try to convey to the young people that I mentor. And I also tell them that of all the accolades I have received, and this one that we all receiving here today is a huge one, a Godzilla type award. But my graduation from college was, in my opinion, the biggest award I have ever received, in my opinion.
That's pretty good. So for me, through my foundation, the Sheryl Swoopes Foundation for Youth, I have a program that's called Back to Our Roots. And what it is, it's to educate and empower our African American youth on their ancestral heritage. So through the program, we pay for them to have their DNA testing, and then we're taking a group of high school students every summer to Africa, where we'll tour the slave dungeons and the last bath and all of those things so that they get an understanding of where we come from. Because I just feel like, and I have a personal connection to it with some of my family members, but I feel like our African American youth right now, they're lost in this society and not really feeling like they belong or they don't know where they fit. So for me, it's important that we kind of go back and educate them on their ancestral heritage. But after coming here this weekend, that this is an extra stop that we're gonna have to take before we head to Africa.
You've all been blessed with athletic ability. You've all won championships. You've been to the mountaintop. Our good friend Charles Barkley once famously said, "I am not a role model." But as a professional...
He's not. I'm kidding. Charles, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But with the blessing of being a professional athlete at such a high level, does it then come with an additional or an attendant responsibility to be, if not a role model, someone, because of their heightened visibility, can affect change in society? Is that the way that you look at it now that you have gone from the court and the field now into general society?
I think I understood where Charles was coming from when he said I'm not a role model.
Right.
I hope I understand. You know, growing up, I didn't have a role model. I had a mentor. My oldest brother is who I wanted to be like. Because the way I look at a role model has always been, if you're sick, who's going to take you to the doctor? You know, if you need a hug, who's going to hug you? If you need a pair of tennis shoes, who's going to take you to the store? And all the people that our young people pick as role model, 9 out of 10, neither one of them going to take them to the doctor, going to give them a hug, or take them to the store. So when I say that, my brother, you know, my first Cub Scout outfit, my oldest brother bought it for me. My first pair of Chuck Taylor Converse, my oldest brother bought it for me. So what I'm saying, he was there when I needed him. To me, if it's going to be a role model, it's going to either be your teacher that you're going to see every day, the preacher, your mom, your dad, grandma, those are role models.
No question.
The other people are somebody that you admire.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I look at it.
That's a great distinction.
Yeah.
It really is, and now I can see why Charles would say that, not simply be
I hope he was thinking like I was
Okay.
thinking.
I've always said Charles should be here with the
pretty
TNT crew
Oh,
for
man.
this particular game. That would be
You
spectacular.
get a good laugh.
That's good, though.
I'm sure I would get a lot. We'd all get a lot of good laughs if Chuck was here.
It's really
But what about the responsibility? Is that something that you feel, okay, now I've gone from playing basketball to now I've got the rest of my life. How can I make the world better? Does a professional athlete have a heightened sense of, I need to do this because you are visible and because people know who Sheryl Swoopes is?
Well, I don't really get caught up in what people think I should do.
Okay.
Or who people think I should be. I was raised a certain way by a single mom who did everything in her power to take care of us, to make sure we had the things that we needed, not always the things we wanted. And to me, there's a big difference. So I say that because I feel like that is my responsibility, and that's what I choose to do. I think it's real easy for a little black girl out there that can look at Sheryl Swoopes and say, dang, I know her story, I know where she came from, I know what she went through, and if she could overcome those things and be where she is and accomplish the things that she accomplished, why can't I? And that's kind of the message that I try to portray is, I'm not perfect, I don't have all the answers, my struggle was real, it's still real, but I feel like God has given me a platform to be able to encourage people and motivate people to go for their dreams and to work hard and know that it's not easy, but I overcame those things and you can too.
Great job.
One of the things that Dr. King was so good at was inspiring people. Obviously, he walked the walk, but he was good at inspiring people to follow him. As you went through your lives, and Caron, I know you went through tough times as a young person, and Sheryl, you mentioned, people guiding you through, and Doug, you mentioned, and Chief, I'm sure you had mentors as well. Who were the people in your lives that inspired you?
For me, it was my parents. My parents were my role models, my mentor. But I was piggyback off what Doug was saying. This is just my personal beliefs. Like it or not, everybody in this room is a role model for somebody.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, somebody's watching everything that you do and say. So I don't consider myself a role model. I'm like Sheryl, I don't consider myself more because I'm flawed like everybody else. But I have to say, when I'm out in public, I watch how I carry myself and what I say and how I treat people. Because as I said earlier, somebody's always watching you. And it has nothing to do with whether you're famous or not. Everybody in this room is a role model for somebody, whether it's a family member or a friend or someone just admiring you from afar. So be careful how you carry yourself when you're out and about and what comes out of your mouth.
That's true. I would absolutely say my mom. My mom was oh, Jesus, the smartest, strongest, toughest woman I knew. And for her to raise 3 kids, to be as successful as we were and we are, there's no way she wouldn't be at the top of my list. And I know Doug said there's a difference in mentors and role models. A role model is somebody that's gonna, if you need a pair of shoes, they're gonna take you to the store to buy them. So Michael Jordan was my role model. He didn't take me to buy some shoes. I got my own shoes. So there's a difference. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I am kidding.
Don't start that.
Already
started. Don't start that, Sheryl.
Okay. You're right. Scratch that. My bad. And Caron's in the middle.
Oh, man. I would have to say just my mother, my grandmother, the women in my life. I did not have a male figure that was the example growing up. My family came from Columbus, Mississippi in the 60s, and my grandmother migrated up. Long story short, one of my uncles came up in a deuce and a quarter, and he had to dress up as a woman.
Okay, deuce and a quarter.
To leave Columbus, Mississippi, because he had slept with a white woman. And that was an educational lesson for me. And when we got up north and we got to Wisconsin, and industry was, factory work, J.I. Case, building tractors. I watched my grandmother go into a foundry, covered up, coming out in dark, this everything. Like, I'm talking about this disgusting, like dark paint, dark everything. And she did that job for over 30 years, and she also worked at Ocean Spray, so she was doing 16.5-hour days every day.
Mm-hmm.
That was my role model.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my role model was obviously my oldest brother. You know, I had my mom and dad at home, but they both left home 5:30 in the morning. And we had to get ready to go to school, and my brother was a teacher during this time at the school that I was going to, and my dad and mom gave him full autonomy to do whatever he saw fit. I don't know whether you understand, before integration, the teacher was allowed to do whatever they wanted to do with a kid at school if they got out of line.
Yeah.
And so with my brothers and sister, it was about 4 of us in high school, and from middle school all the way to high school. So my brother had full autonomy to do whatever he wanted to do. And the worst part about that, if he didn't do it, the teacher room you was in did it. And if it got back home to your mom and dad, you got it again. But my brother was the guy that I wanted to be like. I wanted to be a coach. He was a high school coach. I didn't go to Grambling State University to play in the National Football League. I went there to get a degree in health and physical education. Hopefully, I can come back and coach at my high school. That was my whole dream when I got there. You know, like James Harris told me, you know, when he was growing up, he dreamed of being a quarterback in the National Football League, and he woke up, it was a nightmare. So when he told me that, there wasn't no sense in me going to sleep dreaming.
That's a good story.
That is a great story.
Sure is.
It's a great story.
Now, Doug, you obviously played at Grambling, but then you coached at Grambling, and sometimes we have young people who are so focused on playing in the National Football League or in the NBA or the WNBA, and their skills may not elevate them to that level. Give us a sense of what it was like as a football coach at a historically black college or university and working with young people who needed the education but wanted to play football. How did you mentor them so that they had an alternative path to their life other than just playing ball?
Well, you know, going to Grambling, times had changed, because back in the early years, from the time I went to Grambling on back, where there were so many guys that had gone on to the NFL because integration hadn't hit. Since integration, the recruiting process at Grambling and other HBCUs was so much different. You weren't going to get all the top athletes no more. The Buck Buchanans, the Walter Payton, and the Brazil, those guys was gone. So when I recruited a kid and we was out in the field, I didn't coach him to go to the National Football League. And what I told him, if they're good enough for the next 4 years and you have the talent, it'll speak for itself. But the most important thing was to try to get a degree. And I think for me, the thing that made me feel good the time that I was at Grambling was more so our graduation percentage was high. Not so much our NFL percentage.
Yeah.
You know, so at the end of the day, talent take care of itself.
Exactly. Well, we'll see on the floor today, and we're seeing it throughout the NBA today, that the players will wear special shirts that contain a quote from Dr. King, part of which reads, "We cannot walk alone." And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. So we've talked about Dr. King's legacy. We've talked about your lives and how you have embraced Dr. King's legacy in your daily lives. But I think we all agree there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
So as we come close to the end of the symposium, I'd just like all of you to weigh in on what do you think are the most important next steps for civil and human rights?
Race relations, first and foremost. You know, I don't think race relations are going to change until across the board we respect one another. And so, even though race relations have gotten better, but we still got a long ways to go. There's just too much animosity, too much hatred, too much resentment among people. You know, it's amazing the things that we say and do to one another. You know, we got to love each other and respect one another and care about one another and tone all that hostility down, you know, that we throwing at each other. And so I think if Dr. King was alive today, he'll be both happy and sad.
Absolutely. I agree with Chief. Race relations has got to be at the top of the list. But being the only female sitting up here, I'm definitely going to have to say equal pay for women.
Yeah, question.
And just more opportunity. And I don't think the color of your skin should determine whether you're qualified or good enough for an opportunity. Just because, I mean, Caron's a little bit lighter than me. No.
Lightweight, I'm lighter up top.
But just because he's lighter than me doesn't mean he's better. Up here you are.
That's only here, only here.
Yeah, we're the same here. That doesn't count. Anyway, but I don't think the color of our skin should determine how high or how far we can or should be able to go in life. So I'm all about girl power, women empowerment, all of that. But in addition to that, and then I'll shut up. In addition to that, if we as women want to succeed and go farther and get more that we say we deserve, we as women have to be better and start supporting each other more instead of going at each other more.
Great point. I got more of an observation. Just, I understand that we've come a long way and we still got so far to go. And when you look at family situations, you look at real life situations in real time that we all can identify with. When we lose loved ones or a tragedy happen, we rally around the situation. Yes. And we identify all the wrongs and all the whatever that built up to this moment, and you know, we have an honest moment, and I see that happen right now. This is an observation of everybody coming here for the special day and the special occasion. Why can't we unify like this all the time?
Exactly. Exactly.
Totally agree.
Doug, you get the last word.
Well, you know what, just sitting here listening, I think Robert said it best. My wife and I, we have two daughters, 11 and 14. My 11-year-old we call the social butterfly. She always wants to sleep over, always want to go to a friend's house. And where we live in Ashburn, Virginia, all her friends are white. And she goes over there and whatever. I think the bottom line is, if we as parents stop feeding our kids race baiting or what have you, this world would be a better world.
No question.
You know, and we can go all the way back to integration. When they integrated, if they just let the kids that was walking to lunch together, holding hands together when they was in elementary school, if they had allowed them to do the same thing when they got to 9th, 10th, 11th grade, but the stories start coming in their head about certain individuals, and it changed. But we just got to stop fear-mongering and let them grow up and let this world be a better world.
Great point.
Indeed.
Great point.
Indeed.
Great point.
Well, we have come to the end of our Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium. Pitt Hyde, I see you in the front. Thank you so much, and the Hyde Family Foundation for sponsoring this once again. Greatly appreciated. We appreciate all you do for the city of Memphis. And we'd like to thank our honorees, Robert Parish, Sheryl Swoopes, Caron Butler, and Doug Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Aw, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Great job. Great job.
So again, on behalf
Great
of the
job.
Grizzlies, the City of Memphis, Shelby County, the National Civil Rights Museum, and the Hyde Family Foundation, thank you for being here. Thank you for your wonderful insights. Let's keep the conversation going. It doesn't have to end right now. It can continue, and we want it to continue. And we would also like to see you in your seats early, because before tip-off, that is when these great folk will receive their National Sports Legacy Awards this afternoon. And today's game is presented by your Mid-South Ford dealers. We appreciate their support. 4 o'clock tip, Grizzlies and the Pelicans, and a special halftime musical performance from Leslie Odom Jr. So this has been a fabulous symposium, and the day is only getting started. So again, thank you so much for coming. And for our viewers on Fox Sports Southeast, we'll go to the anchor desk. Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight are standing by.